Okay, cartographers. Let's get going on some cool stuff. So first thing here, my decision with this class and with these videos is not to produce a series of, linear, first do this, then do this, then do this kind of tutorial videos, but instead make some kind of shorter, maybe shorter, we'll see, but more focused on just some tips, some tricks, some different stylistic things, point out some things you shouldn't do, point out things that you definitely should do, things like that. With this video, I want to talk color. And to talk color, we're going to play around with some demographic data. I've got the idea is that I've got the potential to make a thematic or quantitative map where we're showing, something. We're telling a story with the data. More of some value, less of some value based on known, geographic boundaries. We've done this before in the other classes, so that part shouldn't be a big deal. You should be able to do that. Like we'll look at population density, I'm sure, with this, because that's a simple one. If I were to ask you, hey, make a population density map with these different feature classes, that's something you should be able to do, because we've done it in the intro class, some other stuff, I think it comes up. But instead, what we're going to focus on is not so much how to make that map, but how to get the most out of our color choices and produce something that looks good. All right, that's the idea. So what I've got here is I pulled in from your big master class geodatabase. I pulled some of this nuts data from the Europe data set. And look, it's silly. It's an acronym from what I remember. I forget what it stands for, but effectively, this NUTS, it's census data for Europe, right? For all of Europe in here. And you'll note one thing they do with these data sets is they cut off Russia at the Ural Mountains. So it's the European side of Russia as they see it. So that's why that disappears. We don't have more data for the eastern side of that country, but everything else, more or less represented. So I pulled that in. I also grabbed this political boundary feature class from the sailing data set, and a handful of these. I put a bunch of stuff in here to help you out with your portfolio. Some of these things I'll show in a video. Other things, maybe not. Like this California unemployment data set here. I think I just have, just the counties in here and some tables with unemployment rates. You could join these tables to these counties and do the exact same thing. And I've got a couple of years just to look at some different time frames and when, what unemployment looked like at different parts of California's history. Like we can make these thematic maps any way we want with a host of different data sets, but here's one just kind of different, just kind of interesting. So yeah, that's what we're going to use. I put the boundaries in here, and I put that at the top, made it in the, here we go, with just the symbology. So if you, again, left click on the little swatch thing there, I just, for now, selected this black outline, 1 point, put it on top so I could see the actual, national boundaries here. And I also turned on the labels, which are horrific right now, but just so we can see what we're looking at, make it theoretically a little easier. And then left this nuts 3 data set, which is a finer resolution. The 0 that I gave you is at the country level. And then there's a 1 and a 2. I didn't throw that in, but it just kind of gets more refined in terms of little provincial administrative boundaries. So I got this busy one so we can see what we can do with it. Okay? First thing I'm going to do with all of this is I'm going to pay attention to my coordinate system. regardless of the map, like whatever I'm doing, when I'm focused on cartography here and not so much, analysis, geoprocessing and overlaying a bunch of layers and doing all that. What I'm really looking for is a pretty, aesthetically pleasing coordinate system. So I'm going to go up here into the, map properties, right click, hit properties or double click it, however you want to get there. And I'm going to go to coordinate systems. And most of the data at this larger global or continental scale is going to be in WGS 1984, a geographic coordinate system, just because that's how it showed up. And I just left it with that stuff. Some of the other more localized things are going to be already projected. You can explore and you can see that. But for this, definitely, I want to change it, find something attractive. So projected coordinate systems. And I've got a whole host of options. There's no one good one to select since I'm looking at Europe. And I might zoom in and just do like Western Europe or Eastern Europe or something along those lines, depending on what I feel like, because it doesn't matter, right? You weren't asked to make a map of X. For your portfolio, you just need to make a map that fits certain criteria, okay? So I'm going to go into continental. I'm going to pick Europe. I'm going to see what I got. Some of these different things like, equal area means it's, if you remember back a million years ago, whenever you first learned about coordinate systems and projections, whether it was an intro to physical geography class or geography, intro to GIS class or whatever, equal area means that it's preserving size, right? So no matter where you are on the map, it's going to show the countries in the proper size relative to one another. But that can make the shapes kind of weird. Conformal refers to the shapes look really good, angles are preserved, stuff like that, but size can get tweaked a little bit. Equidistant means that distances are true all around the map. So we got some options. And it's a deal. If I'm making some kind of big map for navigational purposes, that I want to sail across the oceans, making some nautical chart, I'm going to focus on conformal, right? If I'm doing something for, aerial analysis, measuring areas on the map, that's going to be more, of a priority right there. So that's the idea. I'm going to stick with this equal area one. Doesn't really matter, but let's see. I'm going to hit apply. And so what it does, I got to move this. It focuses it, number one, on Europe. And looks kind of cool. Other things, East Asia, North America, that all gets tweaked and off to the side. But we don't care because we're going to be zooming in. That looks kind of rad. I'm going to leave. Well, actually, let's do this. Let's just see what the conformal one looks like. Not crazy different. Let's see what this one looks like. Okay, not crazy different. Doesn't really matter. And we could check these. I don't know. I ain't European. I don't know what these things look like. It looks about the same. I'm going to stick with my first one. And I'll hit OK once it gets caught up here. Are we good? Can I not hit OK? Okay, I'll just hit that. All right. And then I can zoom in, kind of eliminate some of these other things, and it's going to slowly draw. My computer's struggling this morning, so it might take a little while to refresh all of this. Okay, so I've got that. Good enough for right now. Next thing I'm going to do, so I right click, just hit label, it threw all these things on here, and if you look, you can see around some of these borders or where we have some islands, we've got repetitive names. I don't need Spain just marked everywhere, right? So I'm going to go into labeling properties. And then in here, I want position. Okay, I want this. remember what this is supposed to be. Conflict resolution, there we go. But the three little rectangles, and where it says remove duplicate labels, I'm going to say, you know what, just remove all of them. Okay, I don't need multiple ones here, and that'll kind of clean it up right there. We're going to talk type, font, all of this kind of stuff later. So I'm not going to dwell on it too much, but the big rule with everything we're doing is we don't ever want to see Tahoma. We don't want these defaults. So for now, I can click whatever. I'm going to drop the color to something a little lighter for now. I'll just do that. And it's a case where I'm trying not to spend too much time on this, but I kind of like to spend time on this stuff. But there, it kind of disappears a little bit for now, which is what I want. That's what I'm interested in. Again, for now with this stuff. But the main thing that I want to mess around with is, the color, as I've been saying here. So I'm going to select, highlight on this little nuts 3, which still cracks me up. I'm either going to right click and select symbology, or if you already have the tab over here, you can just click on it over here. And when you first bring it in, it's going to have this single symbol primary symbology. Okay, and in the symbology tab, if you don't see this, sometimes we have these little, sub tabs, or I guess it's a symbology pane, little tabs in there, whatever the terminology is. If you don't see it, click on this first paintbrush in a yellow shape thing. So in a primary symbology, we don't want single symbol. We don't want it to all look the same. We want to select graduated colors. Okay? And it's going to pick, I think it just selects the first thing that works when it's looking through this stuff. So it picks population. And it goes through, and based on the population value, it's going to break it into 5 different classes. It's using the natural breaks method. These all work. Okay, I think we've talked about this before. If there was a reason to select some of these other ones, that works. For a lot of this geographic data, this natural breaks thing is cool. Works. Again, if you don't know that you shouldn't be using it, it's kind of a good default. And I would recommend, if you're really trying to make this as great as possible, like I'm not a population geographer, maybe it is a case where I'm completely lying to you right now. And all of the demographic nerds are like, no, it's got to be, equal interval, or I don't know. Look it up, right? Do a little Googling. Say, what's the best, classification method in ArcGIS Pro for population data or census data or whatever it is you do. See if something comes up and go with that. I'm much too lazy to do that right now. You do it, students. I'm a busy man. As far as classes go, we have options, right? Now, obviously, selecting one would be the dumbest thing in the world because everything's going to be the same color, right? We also have the option of doing 32, which is probably going to take a while. But just looking at it, you can see, the colors are interesting. It becomes pretty, but it also is completely meaningless in here, right? It's a thing where I don't know really where we're at with these different things. So that's clearly way too much. And there are cases where we might, I'll show at some point. Sometimes I use 32 classes, but it's more for a pretty picture, right? And not for some kind of thematic or quantitative map here. So our rule typically is between 4 to 7, okay, classes. 7 is about where it starts to get a little tricky to discern the differences in some of these, neighboring values here. Okay, kind of hard to see, just at first glance in some cases, which orange or red or whatever we're looking at. But it's still relatively clear, right? 4 is where we've got, that's about as simple as we can go and still get something from the data, not have it so simple that everything's just kind of in the same classification. So it defaults to 5, and it defaults there because that's usually pretty good. Okay, so you're welcome to change these, but again, 4 to 7, and find something that really works, but no shame in just keeping that 5. This is one case where the default settings are okay, all right, unless they shouldn't be okay. So there's that. And then we get the color scheme. Cool. I'm going to leave this alone right here. But there, I've just made a thematic map of population. Is that useful? Maybe not. What we tend to do is use this normalization functionality to get a population density. And this one, it actually this looks like population density in here. I don't know exactly what the units are. I haven't checked that. But what we can do is come down here to it's got this square kilometers field. So we're saying take population, but divide it by the actual size that we're dealing with. So we get a sense of how many people are crammed into an area, right? How jam-packed is it? And it's a case where Russia being massive is going to have a big population just because it covers so much area on the planet, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that it feels like you're in, Manhattan or whatever, everywhere you are around this place. There are some places that are incredibly packed in and have a dense population, and other places where you don't see anybody, incredibly rural, right? And so as we do this, we see that's the case for a lot of places. Think of, California or wherever you're watching this from. Just because you live in California, it's not like you're in San Francisco or LA or whatever all the time. We got a lot of places that are just big and open and all of that. Okay, so that's the population density idea, and that's a good metric to to map here. A good thing for our quantitative map. You can also get in here. I saw with these population growth could be cool. You could look at different ages. This is always interesting, is to see where there are a lot of kids. That kind of says something about population growth in an area, or compare where map of where do we have a lot of kids and where do we have a lot of old folks, and do they line up, right? Are there enough kids growing up that will take care of the elderly, or is it this disparate thing where you've got a lot of population growth here and then you've got this aging population over here with nobody to take care of them? There's cool stuff. GDP, that's the wealth of the economy. Do whatever you want. Not interested in the topic so much as I am the technique, right? But I'm going to stick with this, and I'm going to hit save. And now let's get into color. I'm going to stick with this rather bright yellowish, reddish thing going on. But with any of these, well, number one, I can change stuff up here, right? I have a bunch of different options. What we want to do with a map like this, when we have a value like this, we're going to tend to say darker means more of something. Don't always have to do it. Sometimes we flip it. Sometimes that looks kind of cool. If you have these, highly densely populated areas, if that's like a bright white and then you have a darker background, that can look kind of cool, almost like it's burning or has a hot look to it. That's kind of cool. You can do that, right? But the safe route is always darker is more. Okay, sometimes we want to go safe. Sometimes we don't. Think about your audience, right? Who are you showing this to? Are you trying to make something that is striking? Or is it just look, I got to make my boss happy, and my boss doesn't really like maps or doesn't really understand maps, so I need this as simple as possible, right? This is what you got to think about. So I'm going to leave it like this. Lighter means less, darker means more. I'm going to leave this here. I can click on, just left click, any of these little swatches, and it will take me in here. We've got these preloaded styles I rarely use those. I would stay away from this stuff because some of them are cool, some of them, just don't work, or they're kind of weird for certain things. Yeah, don't worry about this stuff. It also, just to show you, when you come down here, you have some kind of cool stylistic things. These different, shading, hatching, little stipple marks, all this stuff. That can be great for black and white maps. When it's something that needs to be photocopied on questionable, equipment and all that, and you need to be able to be reproduced and then copied again and again and again. Not sure you're going to have access to some, color printer or copier. These are fantastic. But also, they're only fantastic in limited settings, right? In fact, if I do this, and especially with these two, this is probably going to take forever. Let me just select this one. That's not as bad as I thought in terms of the drawing speed. But you look at that, that's hard to look at and make sense of. And of course, I haven't done anything to the labels and the other colors and all of that. But that's a lot, right? So only do something like that in small doses, or when you really have a plan and you're really going for it. This one, this little cropland thing, I mean, I can't lie, that kind of works with the other reds and oranges, but at the same time, yeah, it's kind of busy. And it also, it's that refresh rate. It can take forever. So, with all this stuff, leave it up to you. But you better commit if you're going to do something like that, right? For now, I'm just going to click another one of these simple ones, even though I say don't do that. I actually like that better than the original yellow that I had. But I'm going to click that just to get it back to normal. But what I want to do is not use these unless you're feeling bold. I instead want to go into properties and color right here, and then hit color properties. Okay, so this is the case. And let me explain. Let me actually go back. In here, we've got, what is it, like 144. I'm not counting the rows and columns, but we got a lot of color options here. These preloaded things. And, there's some good ones. Like this yellow, yucca yellow, that works. Or if I want, a slightly darker yellow or whatever, maybe get some more greenish to it, or I've got options. And with this, when I start playing with this, it didn't change here. I have to hit apply before it actually changes anything. So we've got these. Sometimes these are good. Sometimes they just don't do it for you. And one thing to always remember is that those of us who work in GIS, we see these same colors time and time again. We see maps that are made with these same colors. And when you look at a map that clearly just someone picked let the default thing that ArcGIS said, hey, how about this color? And they just went with it, that's obvious. Or if they picked, some of these, lime dust, we can recognize that. And it's kind of like, meh, okay, right? And it's not that like other GIS people or cartographers are necessarily being these snarky jerks and, trying to crush every other, new map maker. Some are, but most people are pretty cool. But it's more a case of like, we've seen that. Do something more, right? Play around. Don't just click some buttons and do the bare minimum. Be an artist with this stuff. You're both a scientist and an artist. That's awesome. Go with that. Utilize that. So the point being, we don't necessarily want to just stick with these. That's why we select this color properties thing right here. So in here, we have the color editor, color mode, and so it's selected to RGB. And if you click the drop down, we've got some options. RGB, red, green, blue. This is how your computer monitor is displaying these colors. It's mixing light. Okay? And the idea is each value, red, green, and blue, go from 0 to 255. Okay? And it's a case where if everything is 255, it's white, right? And if everything is 0, It basically means there's no light whatsoever, so it's black. Okay, and then anything in between, it's this mix of colors. And clearly, if everything's 0 and red is maxed out, it's red. We mix red and green, we actually get yellow. It's a little different from like what you learn in preschool with mixing paint and all that. So again, we're mixing light and tweaking that stuff. So that's how this works. And I have in Canvas, I'm going to have, information, more kind of detailed theoretical information about how these concepts work, and some of the other values that exist that can be quite useful to play around with. And I encourage you, check out hue, saturation, value. It's a different mixing thing. It's a different way to play around with this stuff. CMYK, this is ink and printers and all of that. So that's a thing to sometimes think about, but only really when you get really nerdy with it. But if you're producing something that's going to be shown on a screen, RGB is kind of the way to go to make sure it looks right. If you're more concerned with something going to the printer, being mass produced, going to be on actual paper, CMYK is what we tend to work in, okay? And it's not like some people get really obsessed with it. It's not that big a deal. I printed stuff using RGB and I kept my job. It's not, come on. There's a certain part where it's like you gotta breathe. But we're just gonna stick with RGB right here. Now we've done this before in some of the other classes. I've given you some values and you've changed some of this stuff. But what I want to show you is how to steal color. Okay, and what I've got here are a few different things. Let me pull them up. I went online and I just did a Google image search for old maps, vintage maps, antique maps, something like that. These things are gorgeous, in part because they were hand painted. In some of the really old ones, it's before we kind of had this mass-produced industrial paints and dyes and all of that stuff. They just have a different feel that we can't get. And you can even see, comparing, this old hand-painted map to this computer screen right here, there's a texture to it. There's all sorts of stuff going on. This is so much more interesting than what we have here. Later on, we'll discuss texture and some kind of quick tricks to play around with this stuff. But for now, I just selected this one. I just, clicked on it, went to the website, saved the image to my computer so I could pull it up, just because I loved the colors. Okay. Another option doesn't have to be a map, right? It could be a work of art. I've always liked this Night Cafe painting by Van Gogh, simply because the colors it's just warm. It just exudes that notion of going into some cafe or bar or whatever on a cold night, getting out of the cold, just hanging out in the place, just having some kind of, evening experience. Always liked it. And the colors, are a big part of this stuff. And so why not steal? If you're going to steal colors, steal from the masters, right? So that's the idea with this. Now, one thing with it, I have this one I found. I also have this one I found, and hopefully you can see that on the video display. But the colors are different, and this one actually kind of shows more of the brush strokes and the nuance, whereas this is a lot more smooth, clean, kind of has that digital ArcGIS feel to it, right? So when you're looking at some of these things, pay attention to that. Not all of these digital scans or photographs of a work of art look the same. Not all of the colors are the same. In fact, I saw one, I think it was the Wikipedia entry for this one. It just looked very muted, and it didn't do it for me, right? So find a few. And so I'm not going to use this one, this smooth one, because I don't like it. I don't want that. I want the, analog feel of some of these things. Even though right now I'm not going to fully get it, but still, it's kind of cool. All right, so find something online. It can be, a Van Gogh. It can be an old map. It can be, whatever, a photograph of nature and some colors that you just don't see in your different options in ArcGIS. Find something that works. Okay, and with this, actually, I'm going to close this here. And what I'm going to do, go over here, is that was this first one. I'm going to right click on it and open with, and I'm going to use Paint, which is preloaded this thing in Windows 10 or 11, whatever it is you're using at the time of you viewing this video and what's on the computer you're working with. You should have Paint. And Paint is wonderful in that it's free and it's there and you can use it for some really basic stuff. Many other cases, rather have Photoshop or Illustrator or some of these professional level things, but honestly, for what we're doing here, this works. Okay, and there are other open source programs, all sorts of stuff you can use, but all we want is this little tool, the Color Picker tool. And so what I want to do, in fact, what I'm first going to do is I'm going to zoom in. Let's see, is it Control? Yeah, Control plus. We'll just kind of bring it in. I'm going to get in tight and look at some of these colors. And so I have that yellow. I'm going to stick with that yellow, orange, red scheme because it works with this stuff. And I'm going to look for something like these light yellows on the floor in here. And it's a case where wherever my cursor is, like, pay attention. It's not all the same yellow. Whenever I click, it's going to give me specific to that pixel right there. Let's see, can I get in a little tighter down here? Oh, this dude's outfit is kind of cool too. But I'm going to stick down here. And I'm just going to find a spot, and I'm going to left click. Oh, wait, did it? Hold on. Got to select that again. Find a spot and left click. And so up here, it gives me that color. It just says gold. And maybe I selected it. I'm like, you know what? No, it's a little darker than I thought. I find another spot. See? Lighten it up. Kind of like that. It's calling it light yellow. From here, once that's like, I can go into this edit colors. Okay, it's showing me the color in here. And it's giving me the RGB value. I also have this hex value. I can do HSV. It doesn't give me CMYK, but this will work. Okay, then I'm going to take whatever. I've got a notepad page here. That's another free, easy to use, simple thing in Windows. And so it's a very simple text editor, very useful for coding and stuff like that, but also for these things. I don't need to open up Microsoft Word and get all the baggage that comes with that, this big file size. I can use this. And really, I'm just using this because, I'm doing a video. Typically what I'd have would be a piece of paper and a pen, and I just write it down because I think that is easier. But with this one, I can be specific. I can do light, yellow, and I'll do, I'm not even going to do RGB. I'm just going to go 255, put in a semicolon, 229, semicolon, 141, right? And then what I can do is come back in here, make this handy, and I'm just going to transfer these values. So 255 already there. For green, that's part of the challenge. I think it was 229. Let me pull that back up. Yeah, 229 and then 141. Okay, 141. And I have to kind of click out, and it'll give me that color. Okay, and I'm going to hit OK, and I'm going to hit apply. Maybe I like that. Maybe I don't like that. I'm kind of feeling like it's a little more golden than I wanted. So if that's the case, I go back. Again, close this. Go back in here. Fine. Maybe it's this dude's suit is the answer to my problems. Right? And I come in here. Okay, 255, 255, 160. I can remember that, I think. So we go color properties, 255, 255, 160. Kind of click out to make sure it all is there. Hit OK. Hit apply. Kind of looks a lot like that originally. I'm going to stick with that for now. again, it's a process. And that's the thing with this cartography stuff. Don't expect to do this in 5 minutes and be good. No, it's tweaking. It's gone, oh, that, I don't like that. Ooh, I like that. But then if I do that, I need to change this. It's a longer process. It's a tinkering. It's why I always tell students, put on a movie or TV or get music going or whatever. Do something else. It's kind of more passive as you do it. So, you can kind of distract yourself and kind of sit down for a couple of hours just to kind of relax, but also create, right? That's the idea. Another thing I'm going to do with this is the outline color. I don't necessarily want black. What I'd actually like to typically do with some of these kind of base ones is find a, similar hue, but slightly different, intensity to it. Or we got a variety of terms, but I'm just going to try that yellow. Not quite the look I was going, kind of disappears on my screen. So maybe I want something a little different. That works a little better. I don't know what it looks like on the display for you, but I can see these little things. But really, I kind of look at it as this first value, it's background noise. It's not what I care about, right? In fact, I'm going to zoom in to one of these areas where we've got some significant density. So the idea being that, yeah, that's just going to be kind of background stuff that I'm dealing with. Then, so I got that. I'm going to go back to my painting, right? And I'm going to close this. I'm going to look for some lighter oranges, or maybe that other gold that I had was cool. Let's see what that looks like, all right? And I pick this value, and then I'm going to go back into here, and I'm going to see if that works, just to tweak it just a little bit, right? Change the values in here. In fact, so I got to make sure I've selected that one. Let me just do this. Let's just see what it looks like. I'm not even going to write this down on my screen. I'm going to do this way. 229.171.61. And then I'm going to get out of here. Okay. Right there. I'm going to change this. Okay, get back into RGB. Yeah, you know me. 229.171.61. Okay, I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to change this to something that isn't that default gray. So some kind of orangish, brownish, goldish thing. Change that. Okay, doesn't look crazy different. At the same time, it's looking a little different in here. Maybe you're picking up on it, maybe not, right? And I'm going to go back. Oranges, reds, I'm going to do that. It does kind of make, with having this light yellow in here, kind of make some of this orange go away. Maybe what I want to do is, instead of doing the same thing for everything, maybe I pick one of these that I use for every single boundary in here, outline color, raw umber. I think maybe that's what I used. Maybe that's cool. That kind of, these pop a little more. That still looks good there. All these colors work together already. Maybe I don't want to use that raw umber. Maybe what I want to do is use, whiskey brown or whatever we got over here. Use these colors. Take from it. We're stealing. We steal. That's what we do with this stuff. And as I'll keep saying, it's not bad. It's bad to copy, right? To just kind of replicate this or let AI replicate it or whatever. But it's good to go like, all right, what's this guy that everybody's interested in? It seems to be a big deal. Let's take from what we can from him, put it into our own stuff, but we're definitely making it our own. I'm not using this to paint my own exact copy of this. I'm using these colors for my own map, right? Trying to get my voice on here. It's still going to be me, even if I'm stealing from other artists, right? Or other cartographers or whatever it is. It's totally okay to do that. You dig? Okay, so that's where I'm going to end it. I'm not trying to make some complete map. I just want to show some tricks in here. And I'll continue to show some different tricks. There's still some other color stuff I want to talk about. I discussed texture and all that. We'll get into, I mean, scale is one issue. Back when I was zoomed out, I had all of these, you know, the political boundaries things in here. Right now, this looks like garbage because these political boundary lines don't match up with our nuts lines in here, right? So maybe instead, just real quick, instead of that, I want to, you know, get rid of that one and instead make this one the black outline. And in fact, maybe I don't want it black. See where we go with all this stuff? Maybe that's too much. Maybe I want some, you know, brownish color or something that complements better. But the idea is, as I was suspecting, these actual country boundaries line up way better with the, you know, the finer resolution, the NUTS 3 data. So I would use that one. Turn on these labels. Remove the, I assume, well, let's see. Does that work? Beautiful. Maybe I need to remove duplicate labels. Maybe not. Kind of cool. Look at that. We got Deutschland, Österreich, all these different like local names. That's cool. Maybe I want that one, right? Again, we're tweaking, we're refining until we get that final product that we can make a layout, produce this thing, print it, export it, whatever we're doing, and go like, yeah, I made that map, and I'm proud of it. All right? All right. Have fun with this. Have fun with color. See you next time.